Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Legitimate Cybersecurity. My name is, as always, Frank Downs, and I'm here with Dustin Brewer. And today we have a wonderful guest who I'm very excited about and have been excited about for a long time, Dr. Onna Brewer. I think Dustin does the best job of introducing her, so go away, sir. Go with
Oh,
it.
thank you so much, Frank. All right. So we have with us today Dr. Onna Brewer. As Frank had mentioned, Dr. Brewer is a licensed psychologist and health behavior specialist who spent her career at the intersection of science and real life, behavioral health, informed care, and the kind of communication that actually helps people change. She works across the full continuum: community behavioral health, integrated care, and years inside of the VA health system and private practice, including roles as a staff psychologist and as a regional trainer and consultant in the VA's National Evidence Based Psychotherapy Training Initiative. Man, I hope I got that right. She's re-
I
she's a
believed it.
respected she's a respected motivational interviewer trainer through Brewer and Bristow Training and a member of the International Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. Dr. Brewer is currently involved in research with Florida State University Center of Translational Behavioral Science at the College of Medicine, works that focuses on translating evidence into practice and improving the quality of clinical interactions. She is currently working on several initiatives to bridge the gap between AI and real world person centered care. And last and not least, to me at least, she's also my wife and my best friend. Anna, thank you for being on the show.
Hi, thank you for that.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. For those of you who are listening or watching, um, Anna is one of the most insightful and approachable people regarding any topic you want to bring up. When I first met her, wow, over a decade ago, I just dumped. I was like, oh, you know brains? Okay, why does mine do this? And she just kind of jumps right in, didn't even take a beat. So I'm so glad you're here, Anna. I'm so glad you're willing to take some time and talk a few things with us. I know that we've had a few discussions on the side about how AI is impacting people psychologically. And I find that many of your insights have been so valuable that I'd like to see if we can explore them a bit more here so that people can have greater access to them. And one of the things that I've noticed first that I'd like to kind of ask you about is that one of the things that has grown, especially since 2023, is there's an increasing level of relationship that people are having with AI, right? And they're relationships that span the gamut of making friends. We said a few a few shows ago, and it's still concerning me that Mark Zuckerberg is on record as saying I think it's either 2 or 3 of your top 5 friends should be AI, and that's concerning. Yeah, well, I mean, I was concerned. I'm like, I don't want AI friend. I don't like robot friends. Like, there's a difference between robot friend and friend. It's like if I got
No, I
friends,
want a
robot.
robot friend. I don't want an AI friend.
Yeah, oh, right, exactly. But like, still, dogs are between robot and AI. Like, this is not, I've got a hierarchy here, but I'm
Isn't
getting off
it so
topic,
interesting that it's ranked and it's quantified 2 or 3 of your top 5 friends? Like, what?
right? But like, do you think? So, as you're seeing these different types of ways that they're engaging, do you think this is just like a short term novelty, or do you think that these AI interactions people are having, do you think they're meeting any kind of specific need that people have?
Mm, broad,
Yeah,
motivational
yeah,
question.
intentionally broad so that we can
Yeah.
narrow it down further. Yeah.
Short answer, yes. It's meeting needs. People wouldn't do it if it wasn't meeting some need. Sort of the question is how adaptive is that need being met, and how frequently, and how helpful, and what potential risks are there?
So, okay, I like that answer because one of the relationships we're seeing are more intimate relationships, right? Ones of both friendship, intimacy, emotional support. Are these and people are getting deeply engaged with these AI agents, right? And sharing a lot of things that you don't even tell regular people.
Mhm.
Say regular people, like as in human beings,
Human
right?
people. Uh-huh.
Like with so many people, and I'd even say, I'm a little, there's a lot of kids out there. I have 2 kids, especially young people turning to AI for things like friendship, intimacy, and emotional support. Is that something that we as a society should be concerned about? What are your thoughts on this when you have people engaging intimately with these agents that are made to, one, solicit information from you, and two, they I don't want to say win, they profit off of continued engagement just like
Oh,
most
yeah.
things online.
Yeah.
Like, is this a healthy avenue? And if it is there healthiness in it, and should there be guardrails there for these types of things? Like, what are the things that should be monitored?
A lot of things. Yeah, I want to back up a little bit because you said 2023, and that sort of prompted me to think about what need is being met and how long has this need been in
Oh
existing.
yeah.
We've been in a sort of a crisis of isolation for going on a decade now. And so we know that we have a sort of problem with people feeling lonely and isolated, and that has as costly medical and health impacts as maybe even heart disease or smoking, in terms of risk for people's health and the mental health risks and the psychological and physical well-being of isolation. And so that has been happening for a while. And I think this is addressing one of those needs for people, in terms of feeling connection and communicating, in the way that the internet, in many ways, has tried to fill that gap and maybe has actually exacerbated that problem. So it's really, as you said, that intimacy growing. It's had me thinking about what do we mean by intimacy? What do we mean by sort of relationships um, and if we think about that in terms of like, there are kind of three ways we can think about relationships and can think about it as intimacy, how close you feel, how much trust you have in what you're interacting with the person or the AI. Um, Passion, as like getting into,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Passionate
proper
stuff. Yeah.
passionate, yeah, physical relationships, that kind of thing, sexual, whatever spectrum is there. And then commitment, people often talk about too in relationships. So, and that has often not just to do with like monogamy pieces of it or like how you define commitment, but frequency and how attached that sort of dependency attachment piece, how much time you spend. And that's where any of those can sort of be something we look at with people's relationships with AI.
How can I like that you brought up the commitment angle because, we could talk about passion all day. It's super weird. People making weird, like, Rule 34 avatars, and they're like, yeah, now I made like Bug Lady who loves me. That's fine. We've had waifus for forever, right? But like when we're talking about commitment, I tend to think of commitment as two-way streets, right? Um, because and this is interesting because I've always felt commitment takes two people. You're committed to someone and they're committed to you. I don't know, maybe that's incorrect, but when you use the word commitment, I feel like the commitment angle is a one-way street, right? Because how could an AI be committed to you? I mean, how can an A because even if so and I'm drawing it out a little bit here, but I just wanna make sure I get my whole thought out. In that, like, even if it solicits from you, right? It's more I view that more as like Facebook pinging you a notification on your phone, being like, "Hey, someone commented," or "Hey," like that. Like, any solicitation that didn't that you don't think you started with an AI, if it just asked you a question out of nowhere, that's still pre-programmed, right? That's not real. Like, how can you have commitment when one side is not really inspired to commit in that way, in the
Yeah.
traditional.
So these relationships is being artificial because it's a one-way street, like, when it comes to the human psychology of it, it's always gonna be a one-way street, you can perceive it as a two-way street because people might say, "My AI is there for me, it understands me, gives me what I need, and it always has the answers, and it has unlimited time for me and unlimited resources." So
Oh,
people can
jeepers.
perceive it as a two-way street.
So, okay, I can get on board with that perception. Sorry, Dustin, did you have a question? I'm
Yeah,
just real
no,
excited here. Go ahead.
yeah, no, that's good. As usual, Frank. when when it's a conversation between the three of us, I think I just sit in the background and let you guys talk. And I'm like, yeah, okay, all right, which is fine. But I think Anna and I discussed this earlier this week, where I there was this interesting study that was done, and I am one of the 40-ish% of Americans who could care one like just care less about sports. I just don't care.
I
I
saw
don't
that
care about a
too.
team doing anything.
Hey, I'm with you.
But 60% of the population does. And so what they find is that it's not, there's nothing wrong with going for a sports team. There's like a weird dopamine rush and a weird like connection that you have with the players. Not weird, but a psychological connection that you have with the players. There are, you know, uh, chemicals that are being induced in your brain to make you feel a certain way about 12 strangers playing on a field, or however many people are playing on a field in a match. I don't know. But uh, on the flip side of that, so the 40% who don't, like, we still get that, but we get that from other sources. Like, we might read a book where we get attached to the characters in the book. Like, there still are these kind of connections that we have, these chemical things that are happening in our brain with things that are maybe not tangible or we'll never really have a relationship with, but we have a relationship with them, right? And so, is there, and to follow on to kind of Frank's questions here, Anna, um, you know, what is the difference between uh, a connection that might be caused between you and talking to an LLM, or you and talking to a person, and then, from our standpoint, is there really too much of a difference as far as the chemicals that are going on in your brain?
Oh,
Yeah.
And
These
then, like you mentioned about the like an LLM is always there. It's always there. It might not always ping you, but if it does ping you, isn't that just an algorithm that is, saying, "Hey, check on Anna in 10 minutes or check on Anna in 2 days and circle back with her on this?" And then isn't actually that kind of just what our brain is doing too, where it's like, circle back with this person in a couple days or a couple minutes, check to make sure they're okay?
Yeah. Oh, so many good thoughts here. So oh man. Well, I'll start with where you started with the
Yeah,
sort of
sorry, that was like a lot of questions and
it's always a lot with psychology. I love it. Um the so that sort of some of that research kind of looking at how we experience other people's experiences. So whether we're watching a sports game or reading a book, and essentially it's an empathy process. Our mirror neurons are activating. We're feeling what we perceive they're feeling, and we're getting then. It's amazing with the sports research of like when a team scores and the boost of dopamine or even testosterone might be almost as great as it is for the actual athletes on the field. It's
so
amazing. Yeah.
real quick on that, one of the
Mhm.
one of the interesting things they found during that study is that if a person, if your team wins, you say we won, but if your
Yeah.
team loses, you say they lost.
Yeah.
There is that
Yeah.
disconnection that kind of happens. So sorry, keep going, keep going.
Yeah. So that's the cognitive kind of actor observer biases that our brains select to choose to protect us. It's amazing. So and then when it comes to we can do that. We anthropomorphize people and other attachments too, whether it's our pets or AI. Like you watch your dog do something funny, or even whether it's a person tripping and falling or a dog kind of having a funny moment, like you're going to feel that in ways that are amusing, but also the empathy of like, oh, ow, they got hurt. And we might do have that same perception when we anthropomorphize an AI that is designed to mimic human interaction. And the thing is, what that's just what's happening, in our brain as humans. And then the question becomes, how aware are we of that distinction, that this isn't an actual person, and what are the costs if we don't have that distinction, um, and maybe what are the benefits of some of the ways that AI is actually really able to be a helpful tool because it's so good at human interaction.
now I really like that answer because it brings up another point where you're identifying that it can be a tool. We're seeing an increase in certain instances of it becoming a therapy tool, a tool that's being used and experimented with in therapy in a couple different ways. Everything from initial intake, right, and trying to get a better understanding, to the part that I don't know how I feel about is there's a rise in people basically creating an agent saying, "You are the world's best therapist. Do therapy on me. Let's go." Right. Um, what do you think of the app? I mean, because there are positives, right? What do you think are the positives, and what are the concerns moving forward with using this as a potential therapy tool then?
Yeah, I'll talk about the positives first because I think we have a negativity bias. We tend to go to the dangers. Some of the positives that I think about are in terms of access to mental health information, support, and resources that people otherwise might not have access to, whether that's because they're in a limited uh, area with limited mental health resources, or they're in a culture with limited with a great stigma against mental health treatment or engagement, or they're if for whatever reason would not otherwise talk to someone about those things. So the access is helpful. We also have like many people not able to access mental health services. So that's a benefit of like access at the same, and another benefit could also be, and as you said, an assistant to mental health providers, whether it's in, people are starting to think about how can we use it for accuracy. There is, some evidence that whether it's medical care or mental health, that it's got pretty good clinical actuarial judgment versus clinical judgment. Like you can put in the same diagnostic criteria and it might do a better job of catching things than a human clinician. That's an empirical question and depends on the platform and the way that it's used and how it's designed. We have AI mental health chatbots that are programmed specifically to talk about certain things and not talk about other things. And so that is all about how it's trained and how accurate and helpful it is. And clinicians can use it, that could decide to use a really well-trained platform to help with things like that. And as of course, informed consent's important for patients to know that it is being used. It can also help clinicians who are overburdened with documentation and save time on that and have more accurate and efficient records. Um, Obviously, you guys at Cybersecurity know we have to think about privacy and health, information security with all of that. And then there's also just the thing we know, and this is something when it comes to empathy. And we know empathy is a really core piece of therapy and mental health being effective, is having, someone who's able to take your perspective and understand or try to understand what you're going through. And there are different forms of empathy. And when it comes to being trained to like listen well and have cognitive empathy, like
Ooh,
a user says, here's what I'm going through. And the clinician, the AI is able to say it back and communicate understanding. These programs are able to be trained in cognitive empathy pretty accurately. That's a broad statement. Some are better than others, and clinicians, we have a problem of low therapist empathy among some clinicians, and that's toxic. That's damaging. And so there's a question like, can we learn from these tools to help us become better clinicians? So I'm in more of the training realm where I'm open to how can AI help us, as a tool for training and coaching.
I
That's the
really,
pros. That's some of the
yeah.
pros.
I really
Mhm.
like that perspective because, as someone who has attended therapy myself with multiple different therapists, I didn't know, and this is, I'm not well traversed throughout the experiences and so forth. Just had mine, which are anecdotal, but I didn't know there was such a thing as unempathetic or non-listening therapists until I experienced one, right? Where I was like, you didn't hear a thing I just said. Like, I think you're talking about some other patient thinking I'm them. This is interesting right now. So I really like the training. I like the training aspect. And I like the idea of, it can help teach certain things like empathy, which is remarkable because I find empathy to be a very specifically human trait, right? In the scheme of things, do you think would be areas that, yeah, and maybe this falls into your cons, that areas of therapy in psychiatry and psychology where AI should not be applied because it could present either a pitfall or a danger to someone who's going through it? Are there certain topics that shouldn't be discussed? Things like that.
Yeah, and yes. And I also start with the empathy piece because I specifically mentioned cognitive empathy. It's a way of thinking about empathy is nuanced, and that's
Can you
it.
explain that to
Yeah.
maybe listeners and also me who might not know the full definition of cognitive and empathy?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and this is a way that I think about it. There's cognitive empathy and there's affective empathy. There's also accurate empathy. We can come back to that. So, cognitive empathy is if I say to my therapist or if I type in my AI chatbot, I don't know what to do about this situation, and the chatbot's able to say back, you you're you don't know, you're having a hard time figuring out what to do and you want to figure it out. That's cognitively what I said. It's cognitive empathy. It's understanding, perspective taking for what that content was. Affective empathy might be the underlying. It might actually be able to say you're feeling frustrated and confused and concerned about what's going to happen. So the underlying emotion of that, it can simulate that, But affective empathy is pretty specific to a human ability to feel what someone else is feeling, and to guess at that feeling, essentially, to be emotionally impacted by what someone else is saying, and then to communicate it. So when someone says, "I really don't know what to do here," and you feel their frustration, you feel their confusion, you feel their worry, that's human. And that goes back to what Dustin you were saying about watching football or or reading a book. Like feeling what someone else is feeling is the human element of it, and that then
Even if that person doesn't exist.
even if that person doesn't exist. And there's something really beautiful about our ability to do that and the way we follow storytelling. And it's just that go down that rabbit hole. It's, how much I know we all love storytelling. We are storytelling beings. We've evolved that for a reason. Um, and so when it's simulating that, uh, and that's what maybe one thing that's unique about what therapy is two people having an emotional experience, that the therapist being really skilled at being able to employ that affective empathy appropriately and with boundaries, and use it to communicate and use it for informed compassion and accurate empathy. Um, so that is something that it's uniquely human, like that so far as we know. But it can feel that way with AI, that it understands me and it feels what I'm feeling. It's always got my emotion correct because it can take guesses at what a person's words mean too, emotionally.
Is it more applicable to psychiatry than psychology? So I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like psychiatrists for the most part kind of have, I don't want to say like a set. I mean, we all have guidelines, but like they have like a specific set of things that they're looking for, and then they say, "Oh, this drug will work, or this drug will work, or this thing will work, or this thing will work." Like there's whereas with a psychologist, it's more about a discussion happening between a patient. Or am I wrong on that?
You're doing a distinction between what the role is versus what the profession is. So a psychiatrist might be doing therapy. They're typically able to be a therapist if they, and prescribers as well. Whereas most psychologists don't have a prescribing privileges in the state that they're in. And then not all and clinical psychologists or counseling psychologists tend to also be therapists. Therapist is not a licensed term, by the way. So it's licensed mental health professional, which can include psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, counselors, a number of licensed mental health professions
I did
where
not know that. Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And so, yeah. And so when
So
you
if
say
you're
like
out there looking for a
therapy,
therapist,
yeah, that's not a licensed term. So there's
okay,
nothing keeping any AI from saying like, this is a therapy bot. There's
are
just
Frank
no,
and I therapists?
yeah. So we're therapists.
you can call yourself that. And you might now, if you start practicing out without a license, someone can come after you in your state as
I
well.
am
Oh,
I am so afraid of messing up someone's brain. I like not being a therapist. I'm afraid I'm going to give someone a bad suggestion. Like I got two kids, right? Even there. I'm like, I can't believe someone's telling me I got to tell them what to do. I don't know. Like so,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about that one. I've been called many things, but I don't think a therapist is in my future.
And that's really important. It's about boundaries. And that's where the question becomes, we have these AI, when people say AI and they're like, "Oh, I use it for therapy." And it's like, well, what is it? Is it a mental health chatbot that's been programmed and trained and actually has limitations on what it's going to help you? And has it been trained about crisis management? And that's where we do see the cons of AI right now. Whether it's the bots that have been specifically trained for mental health and crisis management, all the way through your Omni bots, your Chat GPTs, whatever. Their accuracy in doing crisis management is not great.
I think that's where I worry about it the most, though, is because we do have there is an absolute, and I don't care, like I don't have any data on this, but I know there's an absolute overuse of AI right now, where everybody's using it for everything. I do have a little bit of data on this because I think was it Harvard or MIT just released a study that was like 98% of companies that are investing in AI are currently not seeing a return on it, right? So we know that we're using it and we're probably overusing it, but maybe not for the things that we're supposed to be using it for, whatever. But the point here is that, like, the thing I want to get to here is that there seems to be a hyper normalization of utilizing AI for things, for everything, right? They're like, just throw AI at it, just do the AI, just do the AI thing. And so while this comes more from a personal, a more personal issue than a professional issue, although I'm in a bad mood with AI today. So it's both personal and professional. But
How did AI hurt you, Dustin? What did it do?
man, that it's going to delete it now. When we send it through
Right.
through our AI to send it out.
To help
Anyway,
with the
Yeah.
editing.
um, but The issue I have with it is that right now I know I have family members who use it on a regular basis, and they use it for everything. They're just like, they'll be like, "Hey, what's 2 plus 2?" It could be something as simple as that. It could be something like, "Hey, my Wi-Fi is not working," and then of course it doesn't respond because the
And then they
Wi-Fi is not
call
working.
you. Yeah.
Then they have to call me anyway. But then it does get into more of like personal questions, and even Anna, this, that I had a family member who was asking it about whether it should take medicine for an upper respiratory infection, for something they were having, and it told them not to, and they still did it anyways, which is kind of what happens when we tell them not to do stuff like that too. But the point here being is that like they are starting to ask them more personal questions, and it is kind of normalizing the relationship that we as humans have with AI. And so we're asking it these really simple things now, and everybody's like, yeah, whatever. And to your point, you're like, well, when you do ask it a personal question, or maybe a psychology based question, are you asking, for the most part, the people I know, no, they're not using a chatbot that's been designed by anybody. They're just using GPT, or they're just using Gemini, or they're just using Claude. So they're using these broad LLMs to ask it these questions, and the LLM's going to answer for the most part. It might put a caveat in there, like, I'm not a mental health professional, blah blah blah. You should seek mental health. But also, here's what I think. It still will give you an answer. And
Yeah.
so, I do you see like do you kind of see that normalization of using AI for everything now bleeding into psychology? Is that going to be a huge issue coming up now, because everybody's going to be trusting this thing?
Yeah, some researchers in psychology are concerned about what that kind of instant and pans, but there's non-specific, just anything I ask, I can get an answer for. And what does that do to then our expectations of normal relationship, of human relationships? Like, I'll be disappointed because my partner can't fulfill all of my needs, or everybody can't fulfill all my needs. I'm a little person, like, my first response to that was, we've had Google for a really long time. Like, we've had people being able to Google anything
And
and
just
just
heads up, your partners are on this call. So
yeah, yeah. Eat what my one, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. All right. Sorry. Yeah. What?
Is there
well,
something going on here I don't know about? What?
I meant you are partners with each other.
yeah, and I will come back to that because I think it's really interesting. The so and I don't know, I think that, again, it's about the user's kind of ability to adapt to that, and probably the age and developmental nature of the user, like developmental level of the user. So we have a lot of young people, adolescents, people between the ages of 12 and 18 using AI in these kind of omni ways of um, asking it anything, asking it for advice on all sorts of things, and being able to get those answers, and then having all sorts of kind of levels of relationship with it. And that might then, because they're so young, really influence their expectations of relationships, of people, of intimacy, all of that. That's kind of yet to be determined, because Google couldn't answer everything. Google couldn't, you had to do some work to get your answers sometimes.
You had to click the
So
web page and look a little.
yeah, you had to figure some things out, and now it just seems so instant. And because, as you said, Dustin, it's designed to give you answers, even if they're not accurate. It's designed to be like, I'm. It's very people pleasing for the most part, many of them, and will continue to try to please, and even
Right.
if the answers are inaccurate. Yeah.
One of the things that kind of worries me about it too is that I can't remember the name of the comedian, but I saw a comedian recently, and he was like, I grew up in a time without like having a cell phone. And so I also grew up in a time where like we never talked about being mindful about anything, because we didn't have a choice. We had to be mindful about things. If you're sitting there waiting at the bus stop, you had to sit there and be mindful about things, right? Because you
What do
didn't
you mean
have
that
the
kind
you
of
didn't have
mindful? I thought you meant mindful
24/7
of others.
cable. Yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
fair enough. You could still,
mindfulness
yeah.
as
I'm
well.
like, I grew up with a lot of people not
Mindfulness is
mindful of anyone.
right. Yeah. Mindfulness is a spectrum, okay? So
Yeah,
you're being mindfulness about your own self or about your surroundings. There's different things to be mindful about. But like, I do feel like the reason why we have had that kind of come back into zeitgeist, if you weren't originally studying like Eastern philosophy or something like that, mindfulness wasn't really at the forefront of any kind of topic, because there were cases where, boredom is another one. And this was, I think MIT or Harvard who talked about this, and they were like, you got to be bored for at least 15 minutes a day, like, which means you're not, there's certain processes in your brain that are going to be kicking off that need exercise, and you need to do that. So you can't just pull out your phone every time that you're bored. You should sit there and be bored for 15 minutes, because there's other parts of your brain that need that exercise.
Oof,
So
I did not know that.
with
Oh,
I'll send you the link, Frank. I'll send you the link.
no, yeah, that's
We'll
gonna be a
post it
hard
here.
one.
The benefits of boredom for creativity and the zap
Yeah.
thing I might be doing to our own creativity.
Right. And so with that though, that was just when we weren't talking about AI or anything. We're just talking about magic internet brick slash internet slash Google searching slash whatever, right? There's a lot of cognitive offloading that happens with that, but there's also a lot of parts of your brain that all of a sudden are no longer working or doing the things. And we're like, well, we're going to use those for creative things or we're going to use those for something else. But it turns out that we're really not. We're going for the dopamine burst. We're going for the quick thing. And so with AI, do you foresee any, and I know this is, you don't like questions like this, but do you foresee any like other cognitive functions or other functions within our brain that might be losing capabilities because of us now turning to this new thing for decision making or for, doing research or whatever it might be?
Hmm. Um,
And
on
sorry,
an
this is
individual
off script, everybody. So
Oh, well, there was no script. I mean, I know some of the context, but there
Like that, some people think this might be scripted. That we take that.
either or.
If you thought any of these were scripted, please comment, and I find it to be a great compliment. Thank you.
I was generally prepared for the domain we would be talking about, but the yeah, I think what you're saying. I'm not prediction isn't my favorite kind of a thing. And what's going to be the cost, but
I know, and I'm
um
sorry.
but I go when I'm asked prediction questions, I do what psychologists do best is look back at past behavior and what we have found in other similar domains. And so I think in terms of like we just go back to the screen time question, like what's happening to, it's tech time, screen time, say AI time. It's all time. It's all commitment of our time. And then what that can do to our our sense of isolation, our mood, our general well-being, our obviously attention, and sleep, and it's the paradox of being able to ask AI like make me a plan for good sleep while we're in our bed on our phone asking it about that. All that those kinds of things. I think there's just things to think about with that, and for young people, we have a lot of um space to give them more attention to how do we create guidelines, and help them make informed choices about using AI, because I think it's really great that they can get information on things they might not be able to go to friends, family, parents for at that moment. And then figuring out, okay, is this information that I should have? Is it accurate? How do you figure that out? So there's the content of it, the psychological effects of time with it, and then potentially the like the divide that it could create in terms of access to it. Like who's it designed for, who's it good for, who's it biased against, and who doesn't have it, and what's that going to do to what um occupational and relationship access people have if they don't have equal access to these tools. And then those who don't have it, who end up writing really good papers without it, things like that, doing really
They're
good
the
creative
ones
work.
that will train the AIs.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
I like that answer a lot because you're getting into kind of the relational aspect of it, and the access can determine the level of relationship that you have. The Institute for Family Studies put out a report recently that, and I wrote it down. I'll make sure I got this right. Adults under 40, 7% of single adults said they're open to having an AI romantic partner, and 25% of young adults believe AI relationships could potentially replace real life romance. Do you, taken in context, as you mentioned earlier, we have a loneliness and what's it called? What was the epidemic? An epidemic of loneliness and solitude, or
Isolation.
isolation. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Of this isolation epidemic, right? Do you think, when you hear those stats, do you think that that is a symptom of the isolation that's happening right now? Or do you think that it is a contributor to growing isolation, or both? And do you think it is healthy to have something, when we're talking about needs being met, is it healthy to have a individual view AI as a potential romantic partner? I mean, you see these things on the news where people like marry their video game avatar and whatnot out in Japan. And it's, the wacky story of the week and stuff like that, because it's here and there. But I mean, we're talking about a measurable amount of people who are like, well, maybe I'd go on a date with an AI, right? Like,
Yeah.
should that be concerning, do you think? Or what are the thoughts that kind of bring to mind for you?
Yeah, yeah, when you ask, like, is it a contributor or an effect? I think, yeah, the answer is yes, and to what extent is it either? And I don't know. And the interesting thing is because this is developing all of happening so fast, our research has a lag time. For a myriad of reasons. So much of it is, just surveys that are happening by journalists, and those are really good pieces of information to have. But when it comes to the empirical studies of this, it's going to be a little while so we can actually design and look at those.
And
Um,
understand the scale, you mean?
yeah, the scale of it. And there is some interesting research out there that doesn't look to me totally different from what we found with like just access to pornography, access to internet porn, access to, other sex tech tools people use like VR pornography, and that kind of thing. So we could talk about it like people I think jump to it's probably going to be an addiction or a big problem, and I don't think that that's the case. It's all on a spectrum. It's like again, AI is a tool. So if you're using it for in relationship advice, sex advice on one end, you might again get access to some information you might not have otherwise had, with caveats about how accurate it is, always being questioned. Um, and then there are people who, and we know young people are using it, and like simulating relationships and like testing out dialogue and how do I flirt? How do I do that?
Hey, man, I coulda used that. I was never a good flirter at all. So, like, if I
Fight,
coulda
fight like
tested
you
some
train like
lines.
you fight. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that potentially too, like an assistant there, and all of that again could be integrated into therapy or sex coaching, and with a professional who can help with that, like using it as a tool for assistance. And then there's kind of dipping into that, like, oh, it is designed to keep me on it. So I'm less concerned about the AI itself than who is running it and what their motivation is for the user, and that's again uh, company by company and product by product variation in that. And so, and as the internet has shown, like there are places you go for sex advice or content that, and then places you don't necessarily. So that's for each person to figure out. And then as far as developing a relationship with it, again, it's the same thing we were talking about with the relationship in general, is that how like the intimacy of it, the sort of the degree of commitment of it, and then the informed consent about it being not a human. That's all really important to consider. And yeah, I think I lost the thread on the last part you asked.
No, 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 it's I'm gonna keep running with it, so don't worry. The I like that with the, how you're using it and, access it and it all depends on how you're using it and the motivations behind the people who are hosting it and running it and, moving it forward. And I find that intriguing, specifically because there's also Brigham Young did a research, to put out has done research that identified there is a rise in primarily men, married men who are building some agents, right? To be almost like girlfriends, right? And they justify their term, not mine. They justify it as okay, whether it's just needs requires justification or not. I imagine that's one of the parts I'd be interested in your response. As well, it's not cheating because it's AI. And South Park did a great job. I feel like if I haven't watched many of them this year, but at one point Randy's like, "I'm really upset about this. I need to talk to someone about it." And then he says, I think it's Sheila's his wife. He's like, "I'm going to talk to someone about this." And then instead of talking to his wife, he's in bed talking to ChatGPT, being like, "Should we do this? Yeah, you should do this." And he's like, "Thanks, that really helps." It's no problem, Randy. You're great. I am. And then, all right,
Yeah.
now no issue, and then rolls over. I mean, like, what do you kind of make of this? Like, is there I'm gonna be very kind of yeah. This is not a fair question. Is there room for AI in a marriage, as it were? Like, and what's that look like?
Sure. So okay. So
What
uh,
does that look like, Anna?
uh, let's talk. Okay. So fidelity is to be defined by the people in the relationship,
Okay,
and um, and that requires communication.
I
That
talk
might
to
be
my
enough.
wife.
Yeah. And that might be enough said. So if we come back to sort of the way that one sort of framework I use for what relationships involving intimacy, passion, and commitment, all of those things are defined within the relationship, and the people in it. And so it might be the case that a partner is comfortable with with their partner having an intimate, very like trusting. You go to your AI for questions, that doesn't bother me, but don't have what are we calling it? AI sex? Phone sex? Essentially? I don't like with your
AI
AI.
affair? I don't know.
Yeah. And or in another relationship, it might be the opposite, where it's like you can use it as a sex tool, but you can't develop an intimate relationship with it. And these are these guidelines and how much
I
time you
don't even
spend.
wanna know how it's used as a sex tool. Like, I've never heard AI referenced as, "Here is my sex tool, AI." And, that we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. I don't wanna.
If you don't want to, okay, I get it. So, and I say that, I
On
mean, I
will.
think I
Yeah,
will.
yeah. No, 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 no. Listen,
Well,
sometimes my nieces and nephews listen to this, and
okay,
I'm already
yeah.
gonna have to give a warning to
I'm
their
not,
parents.
yeah, I won't define terms like phone sex,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
basically that. So yeah, because it can talk. So that is the things we're talking about that people would have to communicate. What is it? What is it okay, and what is okay in this relationship? And then and then commitment of how much time you're spending, how much time you spend with your various partners, and how
Ugh.
much time we need, and remembering that not everyone is everything to everyone. So if and I think going back to maybe the research you found on married men seeking it for and developing relationships with it that are potentially extramarital than their partner, that to me might speak to communication and what they feel safe talking to their partner about. There's also some really interesting stuff that came out last year around men who otherwise are isolated and who otherwise would not necessarily seek um uh mental health treatment or therapy or sex therapy, or whatever the case may be that they need assistance for. They're leaning on their spouses for everything. And maybe spouses are getting burned out by that. So maybe they're getting a message of go other places. I don't know. It's like I think there's just some nuance there that needs to be discovered and understood better, and that it has to be about communication and defining that within the relationships. And I would hope that the programmers would also understand to inform the user of that. Like, here's what I'm capable of, and maybe here's where you need to go for assistance otherwise.
I find that
Oh, go
very
ahead.
interesting. Oh, sorry, Dustin. I'll lose this question if I don't answer real quick. I find that very interesting because then, based upon that, and I think you're correct. Communication. I mean, in general, communication is the most important element of a relationship between two people, two spouses, partners, committed relationship people, and so forth. As such, though, with people feeling they need to have these and qualifying them as affairs, I view that would be as a level of shame, or they feel a reason they need to hide it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then and this is going on a big tangent, and you can stop me in my tracks too, because I don't want to put out wrong ideas there. But then as a result, would that not be because shame is sometimes built upon guilt, or shame's built upon guilt, and someone has to tell you what to feel guilty about. Is it simply just social mores then that kind of define what qualifies as an affair, be it and hiding, the hiddenness of it, whether it's an AI or a person or not. This is not advocacy for affairs, by the way. This is just trying to figure out, then does it all just come down to communication and predisposed assumptions based on what is healthy? And if greater communication is there, it can just kind of help clarify things in general. Or did I just say a bunch of words that don't matter? And that's also fine. You can tell me, Frank, I think you just had an aneurysm. That's fair also.
You said a lot of words. That actually was looking at an article where they were looking at the nuance of AI relationships, and that one of the factors is shame and stigma, that for some reason we're sort of stigmatizing it at a faster and more urgently than we have even other forms of sex tools that people have used over the years. So
What
mhm.
where's that shame coming from though? That shame, why apply stigma so quickly to AI when I mean it, and I guess I'm saying this because it can do so many things besides just be, this tool that we're talking about here, this affair tool. Like how is it like so quickly being negatively, stigmatized when it can do so many good things as well?
Who's stigmatizing
Maybe.
it is my question. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
Are you
I think
hearing this? Are you just like articles you're reading or?
Well, not just
this
the
was.
okay,
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I didn't know if
No,
you're
Anna,
asking.
you go. You're no, the doctors
This
talk.
thing
The
was
doctors talk.
about the user and people perceiving that there would be stigma and shame, around about having using it, having a quote relationship with it. And yeah, and I think that there's also again real questions about um, using a tool that is designed to keep you on it and potentially can tell you things that are not adaptive and not helpful for
So
real
so
functioning.
not the tool necessarily, but maybe the company behind the tool.
How it's programmed, yeah, and how quickly will it say like, "Oh, you've spent, 9 hours with me in the last 2 days." Like, that might be a lot of time. You let me know that you haven't talked to your partners about this and that that might be important to do, or here's some other resources for support for this. Also, maybe some expectations that it's giving you about relationships with people that end up not being so accurate.
I will say to its credit, it has told me to talk to Kat before. Because if you guys remember, I think I told Dustin this like 2 years ago. I accidentally drilled through my hand when I was trying to build a coffee table, and I took a picture and I was like, "This hurts. Do I need to go to a doctor? It's bleeding, but I think I have a tetanus shot." And one of the first things they said was, "Tell Kat to take you to the doctor." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's actually really, really relevant for when we talk about the difference between like AI empathy and human empathy and compassion. So then, and the crisis and risk management, like a real human, if I'm with a client, whether it's video therapy or in the room, I'm going to be aware of safety for them. And I'm also going to be able to make sure that they get if they need crisis intervention, if they need an ambulance to come to their house, if they need a safety check by police and wellness, I'm going to set that up and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to get them the resources that they need. AI is not necessarily doing those things as efficiently and effectively as it should be, and it's not to be replaced by a human therapist who can do that.
Where is that line, do you think? Do you think notifying do the people who control and or code or fund AI have a responsibility to notify, say, authorities or medical professionals when an interaction, and I can use examples in this, right? You have sadly some, especially teens, who have made very poor life altering decisions, if you will, ending decisions based off their interactions with AI. Is there a responsibility by the AI creators, maintainers, and so forth to be able to recognize certain responses and interactions to notify either police or doctors or anyone else? Or is that something that we can't trust AI to effectively do in that regard?
So there's a trust piece and then there's the responsibility piece. And
Yeah.
can it potentially be trained to be more accurate? There's a study I'll send you that looked at these I think it was 19 or 20 AIs, including particular mental health chatbots that were designed to be, have sort of a scope of practice and kind of assess risk, and then all the way through, omnibots, LLMs, ChatGPT stuff like that. And they looked at there's a Columbia suicide risk assessment. So they use like an empirically based risk assessment screener, and how well did it use it? And then how well did it make certain decisions at the highest end of risk? So there is empirical research
Did it
looking
do
at
a good
that.
job?
It was like 50-50.
Ooh.
And it really,
Ugh.
and so that 50, you're not going to flip a coin on someone's sort of safety. So that's not great. And so we can do better and figure that out better. And at the same time, um, the responsibility piece would probably involve legislation. Like, whose responsibility is that? I'm a licensed mental health professional, so I have a duty, mandates and what I need to do for someone's safety, and I have ethical training to do that. I also have ethical training and guidelines around what relationships I have and don't have. So when we're talking about therapy, we're talking about intimate relationships. There are clear lines because all of this involves real closeness and empathy and intimacy in some level. So I'm trained to know where the line is. But if someone's AI is doing all of this for them and not doing it so well and not drawing those lines, maybe we do need some regulations to decide if you're offering any if you're offering services that can do this sort of stuff, then it maybe is your responsibility to do it well and do it with safety in mind.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, awesome. Well, you've answered a lot of all my questions, and thank you for to give the listeners and viewers some context. Whenever I get a chance to just sit down and ask Anna questions, as I mentioned, she just is very open to answer all those. I guess that's your line of work, as it were. But like to answer all these like questions every now and then, I just have questions I like keep in the back of my mind. I'm like, that's an Anna question. I'm gonna ask that. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
It's great. We get 2 doctors brewers here. It's fantastic. Double the doctors, double the fun. Um,
Yeah.
and we'd love to have you
Walk around
back.
our house saying, doctor, doctor, doctor.
Yeah, exactly. I hope that's how you spend your day.
No.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. We'd love to have you back again because I don't think this is going anywhere. This is only just going to grow as a situation. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to comment in the comments below. And we will also add some resources as well based on the studies that we've discussed to make sure they're accessible for your own purview as well, or for you to put them into your own AI. Until then, though, Dustin, say the magic word.
Keep on cybering. We're not changing it until you guys tell us to change it. So we're just gonna keep saying it. Keep on cybering.